Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Beverly mentioned, we're talking about innovation in trauma-informed and culturally responsive design. And this entire team here has been working on a project called Magnolia Gardens that's located in Flushing, Queens. And it's been a great partnership, and we want to talk about all of the trauma-informed and culturally responsive design elements for that project. Much like the last panel, we'll introduce everyone. Each panelist will be able to talk about their participation in this project, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions after that. So let me start by introducing the panel. We have Charlie Carroll with URI, Nelson Chan, who's on our team at Asian Americans for Equality, George Chang at UAI, our architects, David Staff with Archstone Builders, Sherelle Hicks with Interior Resources, and then Jocelyn Carter with the Department of Homeless Services, without whom we couldn't do any of this work. And we're so grateful for the last panel and all the people who really dug deep to address really thorny problems, put together the programs that we are using now in order to enable a project like Magnolia Gardens. So Magnolia Gardens is a 90-unit transitional housing project. As I mentioned, it's located in Flushing, Queens, where there's a very large Asian American population. And so part of our work was thinking through how to address design for the folks in the community as well as the clients that we will be serving. So Charlie, first question is for you. URI has 25 shelters, some of which are for survivors of domestic violence and other families experiencing homelessness. Can you talk a little bit about what being trauma-informed and culturally responsive means in the context of the development for clients that URI serves?
Sure. So I think from the trauma-informed perspective, there are certain tenets of trauma-informed construction and design. So, natural light and having nature in a part of it. Uncluttered spaces, bright spaces for families to heal. And these are a couple. And the bigger thing for me, I get the great job at URI to work with the architects and development team, but also work with our program staff. So they have really educated me about what's important to the clients we serve, and being in the shelters and working with the clients, understanding what we do and when we build. So you'll see a picture of a lobby, and this is our lobby for Magnolia Gardens. And this is something that is welcoming and is there. So when a family comes, 90 units, we're going to have the majority of the people there will be children. So if they're coming in, does this feel welcoming? Does this feel like a temporary home for them? And that's what we're really doing. And then a big part of what we do is really learn from the communities that we're working in. So the partnership with AAFE has been incredible, and I learn every day from AAFE and Nelson about different things that I've never learned. And being able to, and Nelson will talk more about it, but a feng shui consultant, different things. And we will take what we've learned here and replicate it for other shelters moving forward, because we can learn every day and figure out the design that best suits a family that's going to come in probably late in the evening, have never lived there before, and a child's going to come in, and we want it to be a temporary home for them and feel welcoming. So our design is always based on that. Our program staff are given opportunities for feedback. We usually go, and George can talk about it, we will go with 2 designs and bring those based on the information was given, give 2 options to programs to be able to say what's the best things that can meet the needs. Thank you. It's the really fun part of it. The first panel, that's the other. This is the fun stuff. This is when you get here, this is fun. That's still fun. But...
Thank you, Charlie. Our next question is for Nelson Chan. Nelson, so URI and AAFE are partners on Magnolia Gardens. Can you talk a little bit about the cultural and design elements we incorporated into the building to reflect the community, and then also share a little bit about the importance of the site being the first of its kind passive house?
Thank you. Yeah, so this project is in downtown Flushing, like the heart of downtown Flushing. It's on the land that AAFE owned And that's where we actually had our services out of that building, or before we tore it down. It was there for over 25 years. And that's where we had service a lot of immigrants. The population there is majority, well, very diverse, but a lot of Asian American immigrants, and even within Asian Americans, Flushing is very Cantonese. You know, you have Taiwanese, Fujianese, Korean. So that's sort of the what Flushing is about. Now, the population over at Magnolia Gardens will be families, and we're trying to have most of the community set aside to really service folks, families with children who are Asian there. These are the most vulnerable, as I mentioned, and you know, these families are seeking a shelter, a roof over their heads. They're seeking support from AAFE, from URI, just so that they can stabilize their own situation and get back on their feet. So for us, when we're putting this building, this project together, we really care about design. We have to be intentional and inclusive for the community. So we have a community space where we are designing with that in mind. And then, you know, when we sat down with this design team, you know, we went and we spent many hours together. You know, we had some very deliberate and key goals that we wanted to really achieve. And first and foremost, we want this building to be beautiful, inside and out. Like, why can't we have a building for transitional housing, for shelters, for affordable housing, for supportive housing that is not beautiful, right? We have to take away that stigma of what this housing is about. We want this building to be sustainable, right? We want to operate this efficiently. We want to operate this cost effectively. And also, we want this building to be state of the art as well. We want this building to be our statement, our collective statement here. So similar to a building that we actually own and develop in Flushing, I'm happy to own and develop. It's still one of the largest affordable housing project, 230 units in the area. We had hired a feng shui consultant. And that was also deliberate because, you know, we engaged a feng shui consultant to assist in the design elements based on feng shui principles. Now, who knows about feng shui here? Everyone? Some? Okay. Now, yeah, it's been around, according to Wikipedia, it's been around for 6,000 years. These philosophies are widely adapted in Asian cultures and nowadays in all different cultures. Really emphasize the balance between the 5 elements of nature: wood, fire, metal, earth, water. I sound like the Avatar. And it's to ensure, you know, you have this peaceful and welcoming atmosphere, similar to what Charlie was saying about how what Magnolia Gardens lobby is going to be like, right? So, you know, these design elements are through color, through texture, through materials, through layouts, through appliances, planters. So you want to create that balance so that folks can feel really comfortable, especially these folks who have, you know, they were vulnerable, they have been through hardship, turmoil. Why can't they get some serenity in their lives, right? So that's why that's very important when we, you know, design this building there. And so, you know, here's a personal story for feng shui. And again, raise of hands, who practices or like believes in feng shui or knows about feng shui? All right. See John back there. He was also a partner in the other affordable housing that we were doing. So when we first embarked in that venture, we understood that, again, Flushing had a huge population of Asian American who really believed in the 6,000 years of history of feng shui. So we sat there in the first day we met, and we saw a bunch of people, their eyes were rolling. They were like, oh, who's this guy? As we were sort of meditating, right? Just making sure that the room was calm. And he knew, like, people were kind of groaning, like, oh, what is this? You know, it's pretty hokey. But he looked at us and said, well, everyone, do you put your headboard, and if you know the wall faces, like, on the other side is a kitchen where the stove is, right? What? I don't think so, right? Or would you have your feet facing like a wide open door when you open the door and your feet is facing out? Or have your face directly at the sun, right? And people were like, no. So he said, well, that's essentially feng shui. Everyone here has feng shui in them. It was his job to kind of just bring it out of folks, right? So that's why folks, whether you believe it or not, you know, everyone has it in them. And because this is a heavy Asian population, we want to really incorporate aspects of feng shui into that. So, and finally, so this building is going to be a passive house, or built to passive house standards. Is one of the highest standards out there for a green building, energy efficiency. So we're on the path of getting that designation, I hope. I know it's really hard. So.
Thanks, Nelson.
Sorry.
We'll throw that question to George, actually, about passive house. George, what differentiates passive house design from a standard build, and how did UAI work on this?
Well, first of all, I want to thank URI for inviting me to invite us to this panel. Well, first of all, as a practice, I tell all my clients that I'm going to design a passive house building, whether you like it or not, and you can decide whether you want to certify or not. But it is it's a design standard that that's really built under or built with developed under building science. And given that our current the environment that we currently live in, with climate change, with global warming, and currently regional drought, all primarily due to the use of non-renewable fossil fuels, the emphasis of passive house design is on energy efficiency and using less energy and using cleaner energy from renewable resources. So over the last 10 years or so within New York City, the New York City Department of Buildings has been incrementally adopting passive house design performance requirements into the energy code. And so they've sort of been ramping it up, and it continues to be made a baseline and becoming more stringent. So this means that at least in New York City, passive house is not going anywhere. It's only going to be more prevalent. So we see passive house pretty much throughout Europe, and it's growing throughout the U.S. as well as other parts of the world. So implementing passive house design standards really aims at reducing energy consumption, saving energy by 75 to 90% compared to like a conventional building. And for Magnolia Gardens, I mean, as well as other passive house design buildings, the primary design principles are pretty simple, right? They're highly energy efficient thermal envelope, so more insulation, airtight building, so minimizing the leakage of air from the inside of the building to the outside of the building. High performing windows, typically they say triple glazed, but sometimes you can get away with a double glazed. Energy recovery ventilators, which is heat recovery units, and then minimizing thermal bridging or, and so with those strategies, we really approached Magnolia Gardens, designing it to be a passive house building, which requires us to have a greater level of detailing and more attention during construction to how those details are put together. And there's a greater focus on areas such as proper air sealing around windows, window openings, door openings, penetrations through the building envelope, thermal envelope, and then and also what we're finding was where you build a new building next to an existing building, those areas are very critical. So I do also want to mention that Magnolia Gardens is a NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence award project. So in collaboration with URI, AAFE, and Project Energy Consultant, that's Bright Power, we were given, we thought that given the mission of the purpose-built shelter and the push for design excellence, we as a group felt that the project was a great candidate for the Buildings of Excellence Award. So we pursued it. We pulled together the project narrative, the sustainability narrative, the diagrams, renderings, and all this to demonstrate our intention to design and build a first of its kind passive house shelter. And we're very grateful for NYSERDA for recognizing project potential. So with that $1 million award, award funds, we're committing to design and building, certifying to passive house to a FIAS plus criteria, and then in addition to that, right, we're specifying locally available materials. We're selecting materials that are lower in embodied carbon, all to make a really strong case for this is the way of the future. The building's also fully electric with solar panels on the roof. We will also explore the feasibility of battery backup for that solar system, although that doesn't pencil out at this time. We're also looking at building in the infrastructures to future-proof for when batteries are safer to be installed in buildings. So compounded on top of the sustainability measures, as we mentioned, we approach building with building design with the high sensitivity to trauma-informed design, accessibility, culturally relevant, relevant design and identity. And then I would say that we did it all within a reasonable construction budget.
Thank you, George. David, many of us know that this project wasn't initially embraced by the community, but we did have a topping out ceremony last week and with attendance of some folks who originally did not support the project. Can you talk a little bit about the communication for this project and how you've had to tailor it for the community here?
Yeah, we wanted to be seen and not heard. I mean, probably it's a very busy area of the city. It happens to be in Flushing. It's highly residential. There's a shopping mall across the street, and from the get-go, the goal of our team and everybody on the team was to be seamless here. Given the fact that the initial stages of the project had come up against certain pushback and what have you, so it's not that unlike any other project. Our ability to integrate in there and be seamless is hugely important to the success for us and the people that are our partners in it. We used a plank construction, and many of you will know it, many of you won't. But what it does is it eliminates an awful lot of the concrete trucks once the foundation is complete. And we go with the superstructure. We're eliminating the noise, the emissions from those big trucks in the area. they're lining up. So that plank construction helps us get off on the right footing in terms of noise and the noise that we would cause, throughout the day. We're very sensitive to parking. We encourage the use, where we are in Flushing has great service both on the Long Island Railroad as well as many of the buses and subway systems. So the people that are coming regularly, we're doing what our monthly briefing and our weekly briefings are. We're reiterating the use of public transportation because parking is a premium. It's a very business-like area behind us, and it's residential to the side. And so the smaller things, as they mount, really start to make a difference. People that we interact with, there's a petrol station, a gas station, which is part of the neighboring property. That we've approached the happened to be a woman, Asian, as you might imagine in the area, and just started a dialogue. Some of our team started that dialogue with her, and we would use, wherever possible, we would use the petrol station to get gas and service, and she appreciated it. She was also well known in the area, and so it started to resonate with some of the other residents, and it was a goodwill thing where she appreciated what we did. We knew we were impacting her, but wherever we could, we tried to accommodate her business and be cognizant of the fact that we were potentially going to cause some business disruption for her. So the smaller things add up. That you just get that goodwill factor. If somebody comes to us with an issue, and we're always kind of be ahead of parking, noise, and what comes out of the trucks, to make sure that the trucks and the emissions from the trucks are shut down. That we're, if they're parked in front of a residential building, we're going to flag them up. When we flag them up, they start their engines, they come up. Small things, again, just accumulating into people recognize that we are going to do the very best we can to accommodate the fact that we're an intrusion as a construction company, and that what we're building here is the long-term reaches of the community. And I think you heard Nelson say it's beautiful, and I think that factor, we really get some good feedback, and they maybe have a vision of something, and when they see something different and it's really impressive to them, it all helps with that. And I thought at the topping off party, it was a real kind of embracing. It was great to meet them and great to talk to them, and zero negativity, and it was a real pleasure. And then also we're reaching out to the business community. Otherwise than that, we're buying from Flushing-based businesses like the Windows, which is part of the Passive House. So we've got them. We've reached out to the local electrical distributor. So when the electricians, rather than them going to, a lot of them are from different boroughs. They're maybe from the Bronx, and they have warehouses. They're traditionally doing business with 365, so they get a discount. We are directing them to the local distributors and saying, for this project, we want you to go. We want you to get your BX and your lights and your back boxes and your plywood from here. And we're upfront with them when we level them out and get their cost implications. They govern that. They know what we want, and so those local businesses, they appreciate that also. And so it's not as impressive as the design. But that's the bread and butter of what we do, and how we get something built and over the line in the easiest possible fashion for that local community is paramount for us. And
And David, I think it's all impressive. It requires the entire team in order to bring this together.
And Nelson too. Nelson is front and center when he's there making introductions for us. And we've learned something too. We've learned that the window guy that we used in Flushing, very competitive, makes a great product, and we're going to use them somewhere else. So it's there's a lot of benefits.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherelle. And speaking of, it really includes all the parts of the construction for us to put together a space that's welcoming and can serve the clients. And so, Sherelle, can you talk a little bit about the furniture and how you work with the clients to ensure that that is responsive to the needs of the folks who will be living there?
Yes, thank you. And like Charlie said, this is the fun stuff. This is great to talk about. We appreciate being included today to be here and be with so many smart people who are great at what they do. And I've been on some of David's job sites, and it is amazing how much he engages with the community. And I think that is so vital to what we're all trying to accomplish. Everybody at the end of the day is trying to get these open as quickly as possible to get families housed. And that's the ultimate goal here that we want to get done. And so for us in our little part, I always tell everybody's heard me say it, we're not the sexy bricks and mortar or the architects, but you can't move in without us. So our goal always, especially when we're discussing trauma-informed and culturally responsive design, our goal is to create warm, attractive environments that are going to promote wellness and health. While also, and Charlie likes this part, coming in on time and on budget. So, we work very closely with our and the key factor to supporting those in need in our communities means creating safe and dignified spaces that integrate community and culture, as we've been talking about, which Nelson's enthusiasm and knowledge has been contagious for all of us. And I really thank you, Nelson, for your leadership on this. It's really been a pleasure learning so much. And then also continuing with what George was saying on sustainability and mindful design, that's going to ensure that everyone feels safe and empowered in this environment. Like we were saying earlier, people aren't going to be here permanently. We're hoping to transition into more permanent living. But while you are in a sheltered program, it should be a dignified space where you do feel safe and secure. And for someone who's been doing this a little while in New York City, I'm not going to give you a number right now, but I remember I was talking with Rin earlier that I remember going to a program in East New York over 20 years ago. Nat Fields reminded me recently how long we knew each other. I didn't think he had the numbers right, but I did the math, he was right. But, going in there, they were doing the best they could with what they had. Just the funding, funding wasn't there. You didn't have private equity coming in. You didn't have these other funding sources arriving on the scene. And they were doing the best they can, but you went in there and you could tell it did not feel like a safe and secure environment. What UAI is doing, what URI is doing, what AAFE is doing is amazing to see. And it's so encouraging to see that we are seeing buildings in our communities for those in need that meet a certain standard that are applauded when people come to a topping off ceremony and they're excited to see a shelter. I mean, the NIMBYism that we've all seen and dealt with over the years, what turnaround, I think, from my perspective. So for what our little part in contributing this is we try to get in early. Charlie asked me to talk a little bit about that to help with cost. And so there aren't a lot of the dreaded change orders that can expensive change orders. We try to come in early with George and his team and Nelson and sit down and look at the structure and identify the specific needs. Where are the residents coming from? Are there some, what's the average length of stay that's anticipated? What is the family dynamics? We need to be able to accommodate flexibility. Average length of stay may be wishful thinking at 8 months. It may be 2 years, until someone can get moved in. So that family dynamic can change. We've got to be able to accommodate that. Trauma considerations with domestic violence, people's sense of security, once again, safety. ADA compliance is a big thing these years, recently, especially with the 2017 decision with NYC versus Butler, where they did make an agreement to make sure all DHS and shelters are meeting the stringent ADA compliance, which I applaud. It's significant. It's not just referring to wheelchairs. These are people who may have diabetes or heart disease. There's vision impaired. Making sure those things are being addressed at the beginning in the design phase means that there's not that cost layer like, oops, we didn't incorporate this into our plan, and now it's going to cost extra to get it done. And then also we know our folks are coming in. We come in all shapes and sizes. Some of our folks may be working on hygiene skills. They may be working on housekeeping skills. A lot of, most folks are in crisis. There's not a lot of people coming into shelter that are having a great day, and so we want to make sure that we're designing environments that can meet those needs. And so what we try to do is engage with Charlie and, the architectural team, Sometimes even the contractors will come and meet with us, and we try to identify those issues and then go to the staff and get their feedback so we can integrate. The folks who are direct care, they understand and they know what people, what they may like and dislike about their living environment. So we try to include that on the early side, where the bed placement's gonna go, like Nelson was saying. You really typically don't want your bed to be next to the stove. You don't want your feet showing towards the door. And it makes sense. It's with feng shui, it makes sense because it gives you a sense of safety and security. And so by doing those early on, I think you can eliminate, and it doesn't cost extra. These are discussions. You can get things kind of set up to succeed when the building's done, because we do come in last. We're the caboose. And so it's always this big rush. Some of these projects you've been working on getting the funding for a couple of years. And then you get the design and the construction's a couple of years. And, by the time we get there, everybody's just ready to get the TCO, get things in place, and then we could run into a stumbling block. And we, don't want to do anything that would prevent people being able to move into their units.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Jocelyn, so DHS is tasked with providing temporary housing to nearly 90,000 people each night. But at the same time, you're also leading in terms of innovation and shelter. How do you think about sort of encouraging that?
Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Lauren, and all of you for coming to hearing from DHS. And we're not usually included in panels like these, right? So it's the thinking, when we sit up here, it's really different atmosphere. We're not usually, people not happy when I start talking. So thank you for being here. Thank you for having me and being excited. So, you're thinking about how do you fund, how do we get funding, how do we build, how do we design, how do we really, put units together and furniture. And then we bring people. And we have the humans and the people who show up, people who need spaces to live in and all the other stuff. I want to think about when people show up, what does that building look like and what we're saying to them, right? What does that show at the first as they come through those doors? What does it say that we respect them, right? Are we saying, welcome, we respect you, what are your needs? Are we saying, we want you here, no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter what day you're having, because you, like me, need some place to live. And if I was coming into shelter with my one kid, what would that say? And I worked in intake, a family intake, and I ran that building. And I used to say 10 years ago, if I had to go to a building, what would I want it to look like? Right? If I wanted to come into shelter and I had to come, what I wanted to go into those buildings that I saw 20 years ago when I started, and I've seen buildings. I know I have. And so we've been thinking about, I got into this seat 7 years ago and I wanted to raise the bar. I wanted to get shelters that looked like Magnolia House, but I always wanted to look at shelters that had innovative programming, not one size fits all. Right? I wanted to look at what can we do for residents as they come into the building. So space has to be, the way they are. Space has to be, right, for what I would want, what you would want for you or your family. But also, like, if I needed to come in because of DV, what would I need? Right? We have to think about it cannot be the same for every single person. 7 years ago, Dr. Richardson said, what about animals in shelter? And I rolled my eyes. Remember that, Natalie? And a few years ago, Nat said, what about thinking about this? We have this PALS program. And, I put my social work hat on. It doesn't usually go on. I'm like, wait a minute, because now I have a dog, and I was like, I'm a dog mom. Maybe I want to, right? Now we have this pilot of putting, for folks who are coming out with DV history. Maybe that's an option that we can have. And so thinking about innovation with DHS is one of the things that we want to be able to move forward. We want to raise the bar. We want services for those who come to us. So we can't just have one size fits all. We have over 500 buildings, right? I want people, when they come to us, to see buildings like this. I want people, when they come to us, to recognize that they're human. I want people to recognize that, but for, and I say this all the time, where I'm sitting, I might be them. Right. Every person who comes to us is a person's mother, father, sister, uncle, aunt, cousin. And we have to recognize that, right? And so that's the space that we have to come from. So when we build buildings, design buildings, put spaces buildings together, who is coming to them, right? So the front door, the building, and all in India is what we have to push through and think about high quality spaces, right? And this is why we're here today, to think about how do we get you to be a part of high quality spaces and high quality buildings. And so we have closed hundreds of horrible buildings, but We're also now in hotels that I don't want us to be in, we've gotten out of it. But because of what's happening, because we have need, we're back in. I need you to get thinking about how do I join this train and help us bring quality buildings, because I know, my team knows, and URI knows, and lots of you know that if we had to do this for ourselves, we would not want to be there. And so think about humans, right? We do have ADA buildings, yes, Butler, and we want to retrofit, and as we're building ground up, we're making sure we beat Butler, and Tina's like always on that, right? Right, we have to make sure that if you're reasonable accommodation, you can bring your animals in with you. I want to think about how do we expand that pilot, and when to review, does it really work? Right, on the innovations, we want to have programming in shelter, I want to make sure that social workers are doing assessment. But I want physical spaces too, right? Very important. When people come to the door, when people come in, we want to make sure people assessing individually, but physical spaces is very important. And so, I think if you are right, would, help me raise the bar, strengthen the organization. Been here for 20 years. Where we are is not where we started when I started, but we're not where we need to be. So I really need to be thinking about how do we continue to do that and keep that spiral going up. We're in the midst of some things right now that may be hard for us, but we need to be continuing to be thinking about where we go. And so in the space today, we've heard really great stories so far, how good we're doing. Let's not rest on our laurels. People in this room can help us to get there, and you can help us to get there. So think of the humans. And so, I can't talk too long because I can stay in that soapbox. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So we have time for 2 questions from the audience.
Well, first thing start with here and someone over here.
Yes. Greetings. Thank you so much. So excited to meet you, and to know that you're on our side. I was homeless for 5 years, and at the time I was building with a group called I Am My Brother's Keeper, and our job was to buy, fund, and put homeless into places. But we found the shelter system was so horrible, and none of us had experience that we just had to revamp everything. And one of the things we saw was that just recently in the Bronx, we went to a NYCHA area where they took a designated area and built an assisted living, an entire assisted living building for seniors. And we're wondering, can you consider that also going to every NYCHA, whether it's a piece of a parking lot or it was a piece of green actually just sitting there that they raised this like 8-story building on. And I think we have the land right there. We have the will, and we also have HONDA, Housing Our Neighbors with Dignity Act, which lets us use underutilized spaces and rehab them and have homes in a year. And then of course there's Bernie Sanders, what he did in Vermont. The city owns the land and the tenants own the building until they're able to, if they ever have to, take it over, but the city keeps the land. But I'm saying, we know there are solutions and we're asking you to please jump on it, because like I love to say to everyone, winter's coming. People are on the street last night on cardboard boxes already and it's freezing. So thank you for your good work, gratitude, and we got your back if you need anything.
Jocelyn, do you want to take that one?
Okay, sorry, I was, I think that's a great idea, I think so, but the housing folks, we need the housing folks, right? I think that I'm all for it, yes. Absolutely, I think a lot of the housing folks we need to, put into these conversations, right? I think in this room we have developers and, really thinking, we don't have housing partners in HPD to be a part of these conversations.
Our third panel today is with HPD and HDC and talking about housing. So please stand for the third panel.
Great, we had another question over here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nelson, for the shout out on One Flushing collaboration with AAFE. Actually, my question is about that regarding the directive. Where did the directive for feng shui come from, firstly? And maybe if you can kind of give folks a little kind of I guess, an aperture view into the process, working with the design team, and then the building experience. And maybe just kind of highlighting for folks in the room who aren't familiar, like what are one aspect of Magnolia Gardens where feng shui design really amplified the physical space, so people really feel, elevated, and their mood is, elevated when they walk in the doors of the building. So maybe you want to give
Wow,
folks the
how much time do we have?
2 minutes.
No, I mean, that was again, it's in the Flushing community. It was an open RFP with HPD. And we were kind of shopping around, or a lot of for-profit developers were really hungry for building this or getting the chance to be awarded this big project. It was on a former municipal parking lot site, so it took up maybe half the city block. But AAFE, we were front and center. We were doing a lot of the services there. We had a real estate development arm. We were also property managers there. So we were naturally one of the more sought after partners there. And we partnered with Hannock and also Magnolia. And together we put together like a pretty decent application. But we said, what will really differentiate our application from others? And part of it is to bring in a feng shui consultant. Like I mentioned before, you may believe it, you may not, you might think it's hokey, but guess what? That community, the majority of that community does believe in it. And it does not hurt anybody. It does not cost you any more money to build something that is for the community. So if you don't believe in it, you live in there, great, it's affordable housing. But if you do, it gives you that extra layer of comfort. You're like, wow, you know what? This was very thoughtful, And going back to some of the aspects. So the LIRR runs behind this lot, and there's like a electric transformer on one of the far ends. So if you believe in feng shui or you're Asian, you're like, ooh, that's going to cause a lot of noise. That's going to cause a lot of pollution. So the windows have to be a certain way. You have electricity or a transformer at the end, far end. Well, that's conflicting with other aspects of the balance. So what they did was reinforce that side and put something that really blocked off the energy. So again, whether you believe it or not, folks who came in said, wow, this was really thoughtfully done. And of course, we incorporated some of the rock and the wood. We have, I think, like a rock garden there. There's planters on the roof. So there are different just elements, like Avatar. We're a bunch of avatars, just to make sure that everything balanced and it created harmony. So that's, so we're glad to be part of that project.
Great. So unfortunately, we're out of time for questions, but as you know, the panelists will be here if you want to catch them during our networking sessions. Thank you so much to our panelists.